What is a madhab? And do I really need to follow a madhab? Because I thought all I needed to follow was the Quran and Sunnah. So what even is the relationship between a madhab and the Quran and Sunnah? This video is going to clarify all of that, starting with what a madhab actually is. Imagine you have a big table filled with ingredients of food ready to be cooked. So on one side you have diced chicken, then you have the sauces, then you have the garlic, and then you have the olive oil, and so on and so forth. This table of ingredients is an analogy for the Quran and Sunnah. Now, not everyone in the world is a chef. Not everyone knows how to cook. And so this chef, with his specialized knowledge, he comes along to these ingredients, and in this case it would be the scholar of Islam, and then he would cook up the meal in a specific way, which is the madhab, to produce a plate of food for you ready to eat, which is for everyone else who doesn't know how to cook like me and you. And this plate of food is the ruling that is extracted from the Quran and Sunnah. And just like you cannot just eat the ingredients raw, they need to be cooked up. Similarly, me and you cannot just look in the Quran and Sunnah and extract rulings from it by ourselves, and I will explain why. Let's say you come across a hadith. The first thing you need to know is this hadith authentic, or is it weak? Or is it mursal? Or is it mudraj? Or is it maqtu'? And there's many more terms. But in order for you to understand these terms deeply, you need to have specialized knowledge in a science in Islam called mustalah al-hadith. The second step is that you need to have studied Arabic in depth. Why? Because you need to know exactly what Allah is saying in the Quran and exactly what the Prophet ﷺ is saying in the hadith, so that you don't make any mistakes, because this is a serious matter. We're talking about the deen of Allah. And in order to have that level of knowledge in Arabic, you need to have studied grammar, nahu in great depth, and sarf, morphology, and balagha, eloquence, and mufradat, so you have a wide vocab, just so you can understand linguistically what is being said. The third step is that you need to have studied the Quran back to front and the life of the Prophet ﷺ back to front in great depth, so that when you see a Quran or a hadith, you know the context behind it, and you know why the verse was revealed as well, so that you can apply this to the current situation that you're looking at to pass a ruling on it. And finally, the fourth step, which is the most difficult step to kind of understand and wrap your head around, is that you need to have specialist knowledge in a science in Islam called usul al-fiqh. This will allow you to determine many things, and of these things, for example, is abrogation. So for example, in the early life of the Prophet ﷺ, the Muslims were commanded by Allah to do certain things which were later abrogated. They were changed, the ruling was changed. For example, tahajjud. The Muslims had to pray tahajjud in the early years, and it was a farad, they must, it was an obligation. But later on that was replaced and changed with the 5 daily prayers. If you come across a hadith without this knowledge about the early days and you act upon it, you don't realize that it's been abrogated, and so you're actually not following the Quran and Sunnah because of doing that. So that's the first thing. Another one, and this will be the last one I mention because otherwise it's going to get way too complicated, is that usul al-fiqh will allow you to understand if the hadith you're looking at or the verse in the Quran you're looking at is speaking about a specific group of people in a specific context, or it's speaking to all the Muslims in all contexts. For example, the niqab. There are a group of scholars that believe that the niqab is mandatory, and that's because they believe it's a general ruling. But the scholars who say that it's just the hijab, they say it's a specific ruling for a specific group of women, which is the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, for example. And so I really hope by now that you've realized after watching this entire video that yes, absolutely, we as laymen need madhahib, because the scholars that can go through all these 4 steps are very few in number. They are the ones that must cook up the meal for us so that we can eat the rulings one by one and know that we're practicing Islam correctly. Otherwise, if we just look at the hadith and start acting upon them by ourselves, we can make some big drastic mistakes. So do we need a madhab? Yes, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. Okay, so how do I select a madhab, or how do I ascribe to a madhab? By studying the madhab. How can you say that you're a Maliki or a Shafi'i or a Hanbali or a Hanafi, which are the 4 accepted madhahib over the last 1,300, 400 years? How can you say you're one of them if you've never studied the rulings that they've cooked up for you? In order for you to say that you're a Maliki, you need to know the Maliki rulings so you can apply them into your life. But that begs the question, what if you've never studied a madhab before? What do you do in that case? In that case, your madhab becomes your teacher's madhab, as Ibn Taymiyyah he said. And that means whenever you have any question in Islam, you go to your teacher, he gives you an answer based on his knowledge, and you apply that knowledge. That then begs the question, what if you don't have a teacher? That's when there's a big problem, because otherwise you have no idea what you're doing in life, if it's right or wrong, and so you should be frantically looking for a teacher if you're in that position. Hopefully that makes sense.